Hi folks, you're with Tacitus Today. Tacitus Today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio radio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about this insane myth that's still doing the rounds of the gender pay gap. Now, if you do a search, and I tried this a few times, you do a search online with gender pay gap in the search term, then it will come up with a series of supposedly very authoritative studies, the United Nations and European Union and human rights groups and so on, that assert that it's absolute, undisputed, categorical, hard and fixed in concrete fact that the gender pay gap is a real thing and just proves the oppression of women by those evil fascist Nazis. So let's just have a little look at this, and I'll sort of as a backdrop. There's a lawsuit that I noticed where there's an activist NGO is funding an activist women's feminist legal firm to launch a nuisance lawsuit against a fairly well-known brand name company, alleging, and it's only because there's a big brand name here, alleging that they're paying men more than women. Now you go, oh, gee, this is pretty bad. Oh, wow. Supposedly for the same job. And that, I think that is wrong. If there's two people do exactly the same job, exactly the same working conditions, exactly the same requirements for performance, then they should be paid the same. I don't think anybody would question that, would they? So what's the difference in pay? It's 1.8%. That's 1.8%, so less than 2% difference in pay. Nonetheless, it's a difference. So let's examine this. Now, they've done the old troopers trick with calculating this. So they've got all the women who are employed and all the men who are employed in the company, and say, okay, let's look at the total payroll for it's 1.8% difference, gender pay gap. What else can it be? It's like difference in outcomes of education, racism, difference in misandry, misogyny, gender oppression. So they'll go straight for the victim oppressor paradigm and go, well, that's what it is. And of course, things are far more nuanced than that. So I did a little bit of digging, and it took me 5 minutes, and I could tear holes in this lawsuit after 5 minutes. But most of the jobs are people doing the same thing. They're casual, shorter-term jobs. Maybe not full-time. Some are full-time, but there's a lot of people that are working, say, 30 hours a week rather than a full 40-hour-a-week type job. So, nonetheless, you look at the spread of jobs. Many are the same, but where there is a difference in pay, higher pay, such as technicians, IT staff doing complicated things, or there's jobs to repair machinery that's actually quite high up off the ground, and there's a bit of danger money paid, and these people are more qualified than the lower level, but and that sort of stuff. There's not much of a hierarchy in the crowd they're looking at of employees, but there is some. So you could pretty much attribute the very small difference, 1.8%, to the differences in pay for those, because there aren't many of those. There's out of 3,000 employees, there's only 100 of the top level sort of engineering or mechanic type guys. Well, they're not engineers, mechanics that get a bit of danger money for working at heights and so on. So and that would account pretty much for most of the difference just in that. Now, on top of that, there are benefits that are provided to women employees that aren't provided to men, and such as extra sick leave, extra leave to look after children, extra bereavement, which seems to be used an awful lot. And so this makes up quite the difference in benefits given to women is worth more than the 2% they're complaining about, or the 1.8% that they're complaining about. Now, when you translate it into money, it comes to, give or take, after tax and social security and retirement contribution, that sort of thing, comes to about $5 a week. Now, when you're down at that low level of pay, and they're all on low level pay, $5 a week is I wouldn't say significant, but it's relevant. Yeah. And I'm sure they'd welcome the extra $5 a week rather than not have it. But is this a case of pay disparity and so on? Is this evil, wicked oppression and Nazis and misogyny and so on? No, it's none of those things. And there's men are held to a higher standard of behaviour and performance as company. That's not reflected in the this 1.8%. Why isn't that factored in? So there's a lot of things they're not looking at and a lot of things that they're ignoring, and I think they're just headline chasing here because it makes it look like gender pay gap, but there's sort of nothing of the sort. Now I was talking, this is some years ago now, but I was talking to a company that hires a lot of women. Women would be 80% of their workforce, and I talk about the cost of employing women and why they transfer a lot of the jobs overseas to places like the Philippines, saying the cost of hiring women or keeping women on was a lot. They said the on costs of hiring women are huge because they had, I think, 12 days sick leave a year. Now the women used up every day of their sick leave, whereas men were only using up 3 days on average each, whereas women were using up the whole 12 days. And there were, additional things like if there's ever counselling, they offer things like counselling sessions or feel-good sessions for the employees and so on. The women would always go to those and like part of the company policy, and leave their desks, whereas men rarely did. So any excuse to not work at the job, women would go into the bathroom and stay there for half the day, whereas men were in and out in a minute or two. Those sorts of things. So I said the actual on cost, the additional cost of hiring women was huge. Women would use the maximum of every benefit and were skilled at finding out what those benefits were and using them, whereas men didn't. So the on cost or the additional cost of employing women versus men. So they felt that they couldn't withdraw those benefits and women in the company. So they simply transferred the jobs overseas where none of those benefits to the employees exist. So, the company was saying, well, we can get the same, I don't know about they get the same performance. I'm not sure I agree with that, but they get what they believe is the same performance for like $5,000 a year instead of $60,000 a year, which they were having to pay these women locally, and the on cost was running it to $80,000 a year and all the extra bits and pieces. So there is on cost differences there, and I noticed that they're not even mentioning any of that in this what I regard as a frivolous lawsuit. But it goes to I've looked at others as well, but the thing that according to the search terms, the gender pay gap is an absolute real thing. Misogyny is everywhere. Oppressed women, evil Nazi men, they're really pushing that hard and using this gender pay gap. Well, there's the proof. More black kids are given detention than white kids. There you go. Racism. What else can it be? So that attitude prevails throughout all this race, gender, LGBTQ type thing. If there's any difference in outcomes, it's got to be down to something really bad and evil and oppression and Nazis and so on. And they just won't let it go. It's just too useful to them in their propaganda. But it's interesting how they're able to co-opt the entire legacy media, the Googles, the YouTubes and all the others are able to co-opt them in supporting this, Wikipedia supporting this insane narrative that everybody knows isn't true. You've been with Tacitus today, your Pushback channel, and thank you for listening.